The idea of debt usually arrives with a shadow. For many people, the word alone can spark anxiety, sleepless nights, or memories of bills stacked on a kitchen table. Debt often carries the reputation of being something to avoid at all costs, a trap that quietly tightens until escape feels impossible. But what if that familiar warning doesn't tell the full story? What if, in certain situations, debt can act less like a chain and more like a tool? The phrase "good debt" has circulated through financial conversations for years, sparking both hope and skepticism. Some praise it as a smart strategy for building a better future. Others dismiss it as a clever label designed to make borrowing sound safer than it truly is. So where does the truth actually sit? To understand the reality behind so-called good debt, we have to step away from emotional reactions and look at debt through a broader, more thoughtful lens. Debt, at its core, is simply an agreement. It is a promise to repay money that has been borrowed, usually with an added cost. That cost is the price of accessing resources today instead of waiting to earn them tomorrow. And this is where the conversation begins to shift, because time can be one of the most valuable assets any person has. Imagine someone standing at a crossroads between opportunity and limitation. They have the ambition to grow, learn, or build something meaningful, but they lack the immediate financial resources to take that leap. In certain cases, borrowing money can open doors that might otherwise remain closed for years or even permanently. This is the argument often used to support the idea of good debt. It suggests that some forms of borrowing have the potential to create long-term value that outweighs the cost of borrowing itself. Education is frequently placed at the center of this conversation. The promise of learning new skills, gaining specialized knowledge, and unlocking career opportunities makes borrowing for education seem like an investment rather than a burden. According to available information, many people view educational borrowing as a pathway toward personal growth and increased earning potential. However, the reality is more complex than the hopeful narrative often presented. The value of education can vary widely depending on the field of study, job market conditions, and individual circumstances. While education can open remarkable opportunities, it does not guarantee them. This is where the concept of good debt begins to reveal its gray areas. Another commonly discussed example is borrowing to purchase property. Property ownership has long been associated with stability and wealth building. The idea is simple on the surface. Instead of paying rent to live in someone else's property, borrowing allows a person to gradually build ownership in a space that may grow in value over time. Some reports suggest that property ownership can create a sense of financial security and long-term asset growth. Yet, property markets can shift. Maintenance costs can rise, and economic conditions can change unexpectedly. What seems like a safe investment can become a heavy financial responsibility if circumstances move in an unfavorable direction. Borrowing to start or expand a business is another area often described as good debt. Businesses require resources, and many successful companies began with borrowed capital. Access to funding can allow entrepreneurs to purchase equipment, hire talent, or bring creative ideas to life. In this context, debt can act as fuel for innovation and economic growth. But entrepreneurship carries inherent uncertainty. Businesses can thrive, struggle, or close entirely. Borrowing for business purposes often involves a delicate balance between ambition and risk, and the outcome is rarely guaranteed. At this point, it becomes clear that the label good debt is not a fixed category. Instead, it is a perspective shaped by outcomes, intentions, and circumstances. Debt tends to be called good when it contributes to growth, opportunity, or long-term value. It's often labeled bad when it leads to financial strain without meaningful benefit. But reality rarely fits neatly into these labels. Here is where a deeper truth begins to surface. Debt itself is neutral. It does not arrive with good or bad intentions. Its impact depends on how it is used, how it is managed, and how it interacts with the unpredictable nature of life. Two people can take on similar loans and experience completely different outcomes. One may find that the borrowed money opens doors and creates stability. The other may struggle under the weight of repayment obligations that grow harder to manage over time. There's also a psychological dimension to debt that rarely gets enough attention. Borrowing can create pressure that influences decision-making, stress levels, and overall well-being. Some individuals find motivation in repayment responsibilities, using them as fuel to work harder and stay focused. Others may experience overwhelming anxiety that affects their quality of life. Emotional resilience, financial literacy, and support systems can all play a role in how debt is experienced. Another factor often overlooked in conversations about good debt is the cost of opportunity. Borrowing money can accelerate access to opportunities, but it also commits future income toward repayment. This means that financial flexibility in the future may become limited. Every borrowed dollar represents future earnings that are already spoken for. In certain situations, this trade-off makes sense. In others, it can create restrictions that shape life decisions in unexpected ways. Now let's pause here for a moment, because this is where many people begin to question everything they thought they knew about borrowing. If debt can open doors and create opportunity, but also introduce risk and pressure, how can anyone confidently determine whether a financial decision is wise? The answer lies less in the type of debt and more in the strategy behind it. Intent plays a powerful role in shaping the outcome of borrowing. Debt taken on with clear planning, realistic expectations, and a thoughtful repayment strategy tends to carry a different impact than debt driven by impulse or social pressure. Financial decisions often reflect deeper motivations. Some people borrow to invest in their future. Others borrow to maintain appearances or chase short-term satisfaction. The difference between these motivations can influence whether debt becomes a stepping stone or a stumbling block. Another essential element is adaptability. Life rarely follows predictable scripts. Economic conditions shift, industries evolve, and personal circumstances can change without warning. Debt that seems manageable under stable conditions can become challenging during periods of uncertainty. This is why flexibility and preparation often matter just as much as initial decision-making. There's also a broader societal layer to the conversation about good debt. Financial systems in many parts of the world are built around borrowing. Access to education, property ownership, and business growth frequently involves loans. Some observers argue that the concept of good debt reflects economic structures that rely on borrowing as a pathway to advancement. Others suggest that labeling certain debt as good can unintentionally downplay the risks involved. Both perspectives highlight the complexity of the topic. Another subtle truth about debt involves timing. Borrowing at a moment when opportunities are strong and repayment conditions are manageable can produce different outcomes than borrowing during uncertain or unstable periods. Market trends, employment conditions, and interest environments can all influence whether debt supports growth or creates strain. These factors often exist beyond individual control, which adds another layer of unpredictability. Financial literacy also plays a crucial role. Understanding interest structures, repayment terms, and long-term financial impact can transform borrowing from a gamble into a calculated decision. Unfortunately, many people enter borrowing agreements without fully understanding the long-term consequences. According to available information, improving financial education can significantly influence how individuals navigate borrowing and debt management. There's also an emotional narrative attached to success stories involving debt. Stories of entrepreneurs building thriving companies or individuals transforming their lives through education often highlight borrowing as a catalyst for achievement. These stories can be inspiring, but they can also create unrealistic expectations. For every celebrated success story, there may be untold experiences of individuals who faced unexpected challenges. Balanced storytelling is essential for understanding the full picture. As we move deeper into this conversation, another important realization begins to emerge. The question is not simply whether good debt exists. The more meaningful question might be whether a specific debt aligns with a person's goals, values, and capacity for risk. Personal finance is deeply personal. What works for one individual may not work for another, even under similar circumstances. There's also the element of discipline. Borrowing money often requires consistent repayment over extended periods. Maintaining financial discipline during this time can influence the ultimate outcome of borrowing decisions. Budgeting, saving, and strategic planning can help transform debt into a manageable responsibility rather than a source of constant stress. Cultural attitudes toward debt can also shape perceptions.
In some communities, borrowing is viewed as a practical tool for advancement. In others, it's treated with caution or even stigma. These cultural perspectives can influence how individuals approach borrowing and repayment. Near the heart of this discussion lies a powerful truth that often goes unspoken. Debt has the ability to amplify both success and struggle. When paired with strong opportunities, thoughtful planning, and stable conditions, borrowing can accelerate progress. When combined with uncertainty, unrealistic expectations, or poor planning, it can magnify financial challenges. And this leads us to a quiet but important reflection. The idea of good debt is not a guarantee. It is a possibility. It represents potential rather than certainty. Every borrowing decision carries both opportunity and risk, and recognizing both sides is essential for making informed choices. As we approach the end of this exploration, consider the emotional weight.
Consider the emotional weight that financial decisions carry. Money is rarely just about currency. It represents security, freedom, ambition, and sometimes fear. Borrowing money often touches these emotions in ways that spreadsheets and financial projections cannot fully capture. Understanding personal priorities, long-term goals, and tolerance for uncertainty can provide clarity that numbers alone cannot offer. The truth about good debt may be less about labeling certain loans as beneficial and more about understanding the deeper relationship between money, opportunity, and responsibility. Debt can build bridges toward meaningful goals, but it can also create paths that require careful navigation. The difference often lies in preparation, awareness, and adaptability. So the next time the phrase good debt enters a conversation, it might be worth pausing to ask a deeper question, not whether debt is good or bad, but whether it is purposeful, sustainable, and aligned with a vision for the future. That question has the power to transform financial decisions from reactions into strategies. And maybe the most powerful realization is this: financial choices are rarely final chapters. They are evolving stories shaped by learning, growth, and adjustment. Every decision, including borrowing, becomes part of a larger journey towards stability, independence, and personal fulfillment. If this conversation sparked new thoughts or challenged old assumptions, you're definitely not alone. Financial topics can be complex, emotional, and sometimes overwhelming, but talking about them openly helps create clarity for everyone. If you found value in this exploration, consider showing some support by liking the video. If you enjoy thoughtful discussions that break down complex ideas in a clear and engaging way, subscribing helps you stay connected for future conversations. And most importantly, share your perspective in the comments. Your experiences, opinions, and insights could help someone else see this topic in a completely new light.